So it's your turn to ask the questions of you.
Excellent. How did you end up in Anchorage, Alaska, Connie?
Well, it's sort of a long story. I had a boyfriend, and he wanted to go to Alaska, and so I came along. I rode up the Alcan Road with him. I just remember it was a lot of Chinese food and oatmeal cookies, and it wasn't a paved road. And I just wanted to know if big planes landed in Alaska because I wanted to go back to California where I had emigrated from. But before that, I was at the University of Iowa in Iowa City. It was my local university, so to speak, and I have a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing, and I wanted to be a poet. And
that lends itself to
to residential development. Right. So poets are always poor, and they always are a little bit crazy. Most artists are. And I didn't want to be crazy, and I didn't want to be poor because I had been poor. And so eventually I came up to Alaska, and my boyfriend went away eventually, and I stayed, and then I started my real estate career.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So what drew you to real estate?
I grew up I worked my way through college in the hospitality business. And when I was thin, I worked in the cocktail lounge. And when I was hairier, I worked in the dining room. But it's not much different, really, because you have to know what's good in the kitchen that night. And then you have to figure out if your customer is, interested in pasta, seafood, beef, whatever. And if you can figure that out, right, and you can recommend what's good in the kitchen, then you get a larger gratuity. So that's really how sales work, residential sales work. You have to know your inventory. You have to know what your buyer wants, perceived or real, because sometimes what they want is just a perception, not reality in the marketplace. And if you can put those two together, then you're going to make a sale. Listening, right.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, I just had a knack for it. Yeah, it was a gift, really. And that's how I consider my entire real estate career, as sort of a gift. I never really thought about real estate. My parents and my heritage weren't in real estate, and so it was just a happenstance.
So as we know, I started my career very early at 19. And when I discovered Connie Yoshimura, it was while I was president of the multiple listing service, and we would have breakfast every Thursday. And my favorite guest speaker as president of the multiple, and I would ask the staff, get this person or that person, was always Connie Yoshimura. And you were always very generous with your knowledge and your experiences. And that's when I first discovered you.
Yeah. Well, when I came here, I didn't know anyone, and I didn't know anything about real estate at all. But what I did from my academic and creative experience is I knew how to write. And so I really utilized my writing skills. And one day, I was approached about writing an article for the local newspaper. And I did that for many, many years, usually almost on a weekly basis. And so that's how people really got to know me. And so what I encourage new people to do is use whatever skill you have or whatever relationship that you have. So I don't have a family. I am married, but I have 2 poodles. They're not going to give me any business, right? I don't have any children, so I don't have a relationship with PTAs and that sort of thing. I'm not a real religious person, so I don't have that network either. So basically what I did is I wrote newspaper articles and I did open houses, and that's where I met all of my clients, was at open houses. And then from open houses, I learned what I really liked were houses that were brand new because they smelled so nice. And, it really is the American dream for everyone to have their own home. And that American dream sort of equates in many instances to having their own brand new home and being able to select their kitchen cabinets, their appliances, their flooring, and all that sort of thing. But the one thing that people have to learn when they go through that process, it doesn't matter if it's a $350,000 house or a $3 million house, which we have now in Anchorage. Every home is a compromise of some sort. Even if it's $3 million, there is some sort of compromise over the view or the topo or whatever. Yeah, there's always a compromise that needs to be made. And a good realtor will sort of recognize that. You know, someone told me that I should read the Dale Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I'm reading it once again. Are you really?
Once I finish it, I'll give it to you.
No, no, I don't want to. I don't.
Oh, it's fabulous.
No. So here's the deal. So I said, really? You want me to read the Dale Carnegie book? I have a master's in creative writing. I am not going to read that book. And he kept handing it to me until one day I actually picked it up. And now I do give it to new realtors because as far as sales are concerned, there is no better book. And what I've remembered about that book is people always have an objection to something, whether it's real or perceived, they have an objection. And so what Dale Carnegie says, which is my Warren Buffett, so to speak, is you have to acknowledge the objection. So you can't ignore it. And a lot of salespeople just want to ignore the objection, but you have to acknowledge the objection and then you can move on. So what I always have learned to say, and sometimes maybe it is a little white lie, is, well, I had a client who felt that very same way about the kitchen not being large enough. And so one of the things that they did was whatever, right? And so you acknowledge the objection first, and then you find the solution. And you also try to make them feel like they're not the only one that has that concern about the property. And it can be a wide variety of things about the property, because remember, every home is a compromise of some sort. And every home is personal. It's your right home. And that's what I like. I mean, you know, I took the CCIM courses. I never finished. And I took that information about pro formas and cash on cash return and internal rate of return. And I ultimately applied it to residential land development, which is what I do now, which is a very creative process. But I think that it's just the backstory. I mean, what brings a family, a couple, on Super Bowl Sunday to an open house? Really? Why are you here? Why are you here? Because it's raining and we're having a blizzard or it's 10 degrees below zero. They have a backstory. And people buy and sell homes based upon marriage, birth, death, divorce, and job change. And if you really go and look at why people are buying and selling, those are the 5 primary reasons. And as a storyteller, as a poet, I like to know that backstory of what brought them to me on that particular day and hour.
So I started in residential real estate, and then my passion took me in a different direction. But I can tell you who my favorite client was.
Mm-hmm.
He was the first person I sold a house to, and he was kind of a cad. Every time he got married, I sold him a house, and every time I got divorced, I sold a house. So, I mean, I was okay with that. But you must have, thinking back and forward, but you must have some clients that just kind of make you smile.
Well, I think about my first client, actually, and he was a young engineer coming to work for ConocoPhillips, which was Arco Alaska back then. And she was a nurse, and they were new to Alaska. And it was just a phone call to the brokerage where I was working. And I remember them. And we sold them a house, and the interest rate was 15.35%. back.
I'm glad that you said that because
Yeah.
people get wrapped around that axle.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Right. And they bought that house. And then 2 years ago, they showed up at another open house.
Bravo.
Right, they did. And they bought a different house, you know. And it was very interesting. And I met them again at an open house. So it is a small community, you know. Anchorage, Alaska has less than 300,000 people for a municipality, which includes Girdwood, Eagle River, and Bear Valley. So it's a small community. Yeah.
Well, and buying a home is so personal.
It is.
So personal. I mean, I still get people calling me from when I sold them a house, 45 years ago. I meet with them, tell them that I'm not the best person to help them with their house, and I often bring you or one of the residential agents, but we played a part of their life, and they remember that. Yeah. So I guess I get that as commercial, not as much I think as residential, but that's a good story. I like that they found their way back to
Right. One of the things that I did learn, actually, because I liked new and I liked that creative process of, selecting the color of the wall, selecting the countertops, the bathrooms, It used to be the master bedroom was huge. It could be 16 by 20. Now the master bedroom is much smaller, but the bathrooms have become spa-like, so the bathroom is almost as large as a significant portion of the bedroom. And then the closet now is more than a walk-in, it has special shelving and all of that sort of thing. So you get to see the changing demographics, it's really the baby boomers, that those people that were born after World War II, that demographic is so huge. It has dictated what's built in new construction. And now always those boomers are older and they're looking at ranch homes. And out in the valley, for example, over 50% of all the new construction homes are ranch homes that satisfy that sort of aging boomer population.
Yeah, I can see that.
Now, what happens when you're dealing with ranches are wide and shallow. And so here in Anchorage, where land is so expensive, our lots are small. They're 50 feet wide or 60 feet wide. They don't accommodate a ranch very well. But out in the valley that has hundreds of thousands of acres, you can see some beautiful ranch homes where the master bedroom is on one side and then the secondary bedrooms are on the other side of the house. And they're, they're sprawling. That's really not the best adjective to use, but they're beautiful homes that are out there. And in many instances, the homes are as beautiful or more than what we're finding in Anchorage. There are 57,000 cars that go back and forth between the valley and Anchorage almost on a daily basis.
When you're talking residential real estate, I can hear the passion in your voice.
So I do like it.
I know. Anyone that's listening to this podcast can hear that. So when you wake up in the morning, what do you think? What do you, are you thinking development, or are you thinking design of a home, or what kind of tickles your fancy?
Well, really what tickles my fancy is finding a piece of property and developing it, because every property, just like every home, is different. The topo, the soils, where the water and sewer is, or if it's going to be well and septic, what the view is like. And it's a very, very creative process to then figure out what the layout of the roads and streets should be. And then from there, you figure out the type of housing and the price point that the homes should be, and then what the exterior elevations of the homes should look like, and then the homeowners association that will take care of the subdivision and retain its character for the next 20 or 30 years. I realize that not everyone likes a homeowners association, but if they are well run and they do provide value on a long-term basis. We have attached townhomes in Anchorage that don't have a homeowners association because they're on small fee simple lots. They share a common wall, and one side can have a new roof and a new porch and a fresh coat of paint, and the other one can be 30 years old and nothing has been done. And that really destroys the value of that community. So yeah, I do believe in homeowners associations if they're appropriately managed.
I look at some of the neighborhoods that you've developed. What comes to mind is Sandhill.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a grid. When people think of a neighborhood, they think of streets going this way and then a street going at a 90-degree.
Right.
But all of your streets in that particular subdivision, and then I've looked at others, are meandering up the hills and down the hills, saving as many trees and natural vegetation as possible. So you must, when you look at virgin land, you must see that.
Well, I will tell you that I have fought with every engineer and every general contractor that I've ever had to hire because their idea is to clear cut.
Yeah.
And I refuse to clear cut the trees. And then they say, well, Connie, the lot is so small, the builder or the buyer is going to have to tree cut. And I say, well, that's their choice. That's their choice. But my choice is I am going to save every tree. And I will tell you that a rectangular or a square, as far as development is concerned, it is the most efficient and the least expensive, but it is truly boring. Yeah. So I do like that curvilinear street. I do like cul-de-sacs. I just think they're more interesting.
And the topography.
And I think people do appreciate that. And if it costs a couple of $1,000s more to sate the trees or to put a little curve in the street, then, that's something that the developer and the buyer can share and you can have a nicer looking. So years ago, when I was just a newer developer, I had the opportunity to work for Carr Gottstein Properties, and they were a major developer here. And I remember going up to the 6th floor to their large conference room, and it was sort of like, okay, this is not my PhD. This is not poetry, but this is residential land development. So I remember Barney Gottstein asking me about the pro forma, asking me about the costs for the development, asking me about that little curve in that road, actually, if you want to know
how much that costs.
Right. How much extra is that going to cost, Connie? And so I explained it all. And then Larry Carr, who was a partner in that situation, he never said anything up until the very end. And what he said to me was, Connie, when I drive through this community, which was Eastbrook at the time, I want to have, in 10 years, I want to still have a sense of pride. And I will always remember and thank him for saying that to me, because that's how I have learned to do my development. I want to have a sense of pride when I drive through the subdivision, and I want the homeowners to have a sense of pride as well.
Check and check. I think you've done that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So this is who we are, right? This is Lottie Michael and Connie Yoshimura, me, and we've reached a period of time in our life where we're not retiring. We're moving forward. Retirement would be really boring, but we are willing at this particular point in time to share what we have learned over our real estate careers.
Kind of give you a glimpse of what we've got planned for our next 5 years, because retirement, I didn't know you were going to even say that word, but we have a plan.
Yeah. We are not retiring. We're moving forward. We're real excited. And I share your belief that Alaska's probably the best place in the United States, if not the world, to be in. Because in Alaska, you can do whatever you're brave enough to do, to try out. Right. Whatever you're brave enough to do. And we're going to do it. Yeah.
So here we go.
We're taking you with us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.